Hello. What do you know about children who grew up in orphanages? Today I am telling you about how abandoned they are, what psychological trauma such children can have, especially those who were adopted by monsters in the human community. After all, none of us think about it much. People start talking about it when it is too late, and the consequences make you grab your head in horror. If you are ready, then let's begin. Andrew Rivers did not know what family meant. He knew the smell of shared sheets, the dim light in the bedrooms of the orphanage, and the stern voice of the teacher, Miss Laurel, who began to shout every morning, "Rise, and don't dream of being late for breakfast today." He lived in the orphanage since he was 2 years old, since the time his parents left him, crying on the doorstep. There was no note, no documents, basically nothing. He was a kind boy, polite. When Andrew grew up, he always taught the younger children lessons, read stories aloud, and almost never pitied them. They loved him, but for some unknown reason, they didn't take him away. "He's so good," potential parents said. "But I don't know. Something's wrong." Something about him stopped people, as if there was something strange hiding behind his kindness. Too quiet, too adult a look. "He seemed not to be with us," one woman said after a trial visit. His eyes pointed to his other peoples. 5 decorations, 5 families, 5 times hope collapsed like a house of cards. Once, a potential mother got into an accident. Another time, the house they wanted to take him to burned down the day before the move. Some people just had a row. All these coincidences seemed very strange. When he turned 12, James and Linda Harding came to visit. He immediately felt that they were different and everything would work out. They were from Texas, solid, well-groomed, with wide smiles and perfectly rehearsed lines. "We need warmth," Linda said, putting her hand on her husband's shoulder. "We want to give our love to someone." "You'll like it here, boy," the class winked. "Fresh air, a horse, open spaces, everything will be fine." To be honest, their ranch looked like the pictures. A white house with a porch, a barn, 3 horses, a wide meadow, lost in the sky beyond the world horizon. Dogs, well-kept paths, a porch with a swing, a fairy tale. But inside, in the rooms of the house, something felt wrong. The first night, Andrew woke up from the silence. Not from the sound, but from their appearance. In the shelter, someone was always snoring, someone was moaning, doors were slamming, someone was crying. But here, nothing. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out why a chill was creeping up his spine. The next morning, James said, "We have rules." He spoke softly, but without the right to discuss them. "Insert at 6 o'clock. You help around the house and the yard so that you can become an independent man, and we have no reason to punish you. You must be grateful to us and do everything we say. And always be a good boy," Linda Music added. Her voice was restrained, respectful, but her eyes did not smile. School was a breath of fresh air for Andrew. He quickly got into it, studied well, especially in biology and literature. He was not teased, but he did not have many friends. He was a loner. "Hey, you from that ranch, huh?" a classmate named Trevor asked one day. "Yeah." "They don't train you like a dog?" Andrew just shrugged. He had learned not to react, although something black was growing inside him, something he couldn't explain. Sometimes he felt like his face was becoming alien in the mirror, and every time he returned home, it felt like the ranch was breathing behind him. The walls were watching. He tried to be inconspicuous. Even in the locker room before gym, he was the last one to change, after the others had already left. "Hey kid, "Why are you taking so long to undress?" Trevor asked one day. "Or do you have a third ear?" "Leave me alone," he answered quietly. "You're kind of weird," said a classmate and left. The teachers described him as difficult but obedient. One time, Mr. Connors, the gym teacher, asked him, "Are you okay, Andrew? You seem agitated, like you're hiding." "It's okay," the boy replied, but that okay rang in the air like a false note. One evening, Linda came up to him while he was mopping the floor in the hallway. "What did you forget under the bed in our bedroom?" Andrew turned pale. He wanted to get a flashlight since he had lost his. "Nothing, I was just looking." She smiled slowly, too slowly. "I hope you realize that we don't like it when someone looks where they shouldn't." "Got me?" He nodded. It dawned on him that they didn't like it when you looked at all. At night, he began to hear footsteps outside the door. Not loud ones, like someone was walking around barefoot. Sometimes he woke up because someone was standing by his bed. But when he opened his eyes, there was no one there. He tried to talk to Linda. "I'm scared. I think someone comes into my room at night and watches me." "It's your imagination, honey." "But I heard—" "Quiet." Her voice became sharp. "They are not scared in this house, and they do not make things up." Andrew began to stutter, imperceptibly, slightly, but it began to manifest itself at school. He began to forget words. His hands shook, and at night he scratched his shoulders, as if trying to pull something out. One day at school, Mr. Connors noticed how he was again the last one in the locker room. "Kid, what's wrong?" "Everything is fine." "Are you sure?" Connors went out, but returned a couple of minutes later. He forgot his whistle. He saw Andrew, in his underwear. His chest, back, stomach were covered in bruises. Some of the bruises looked fresh. There were burns on his thigh, like cigarette burns. "Shit," the teacher breathed. "Who did this to you?" "I did it myself. I just fell off my bike." "Andrew, it doesn't look like you fell by accident." "I'm telling you, it's my fault. I just fell, that's all." His voice broke. He pulled his t-shirt up and turned away. Mr. Connors did not calm down. In the evening he went to the ranch to talk to the boy's parents. They met him with a smile. "Pie, tea." James joked. Linda smiled benevolently. "Our boy is a little strange," James said softly. "Sometimes he fantasizes, probably because of the past. The time spent in the orphanage takes its toll." "We do everything to make him feel good," Linda added. "Just be patient." On the way back, the teacher kept thinking, "Something is wrong here, but everything looks perfect, even too perfect." And in the backyard of the ranch, Andrew sat, huddled like an animal. He heard what the adults were talking about, and he knew, now it will be worse, much worse. The Harding Ranch was beautiful only on the outside. White shutters, well-kept flower beds, wicker furniture on the veranda. All this was a mask stretched over the face of a monster. Behind the facade of a cozy American house hid a real hell, where fear, pain, and submission reigned instead of love. From the very first weeks after moving, Andrew realized that his foster family was not salvation, but a cage. At first, everything was restrained, cold, but bearable. And then it began. "Why did you put the plate on the top shelf?" Linda stood with a rolling pin in her hands, as if she continued to knead the dough. Only now it was not a pie, it was him. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Knock. The rolling pin crashed into his side. Then another one, on the back so that he fell to the floor, choking with pain. "Are you deaf?" I said, put the dishes down. She screamed, raining blows down, one after another. He heard his ribs crunching. Andrew tried to cover himself with his hands, but it was no use. Each of her blows was precise and cruel, as if she knew where to hit to make the pain last as long as possible. You ungrateful creature, we saved you, and in response you... This? She often had a rolling pin in her hands, her favorite weapon of education. She baked pies and then, without wiping her hands from the flour, beat her boy with it. First for mistakes, then just out of habit. His father, James, was different. He didn't yell. He took his time. His bullying was like a game, a cruel game. When he drank, and he drank almost always, Andrew turned into a toy for beating and bullying. "Boy, where's my beer?" he yelled from the living room. Andrew rushed, stumbling, passing the can with trembling hands. If he did it too slowly, the game began. "Stop, dog." He threw the lasso, hooked it around the boy's neck, pulled. Lightly at first, then harder, as if he was training. "Who are you?" "That's right, nobody." He laughed, squeezing his throat. "You can't even bark, you bastard." Andrew twitched, gasped for breath, scratched the floor with his nails until he lost consciousness. Sometimes he fainted. Well, there you go, you've shit yourself again. If you don't know how to play, don't get involved in the game. The worst part began when James sat down on the veranda to smoke. He dragged Andrew along with him. "Sit next to him," I said. He sat on the swing, lit a cigarette, and, without looking, pressed the cigarette to his shoulder, back, thigh. "Shut up. Boys don't squeal. Only bitches squeal." Andrew pressed himself into the ground, holding back a scream. His skin hissed. Pain shot through his entire body. Sometimes in the same place, over and over again. Burns covered his back, his hips, like a map of charred islands on his skin. That's it. Learn to obey. Andrew hardly slept. Every night was a fear that his mother would open the door and start beating him for some trifle, or that his father would want to communicate. Once he fell asleep and woke up from a blow to his legs. "You didn't make the duvet cover right. You're a lazy bitch," Linda screamed, hitting his legs with a wooden brush. After that, he stopped sleeping properly. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to end. But it never did. He scrubbed his hands until they bled, so he wouldn't feel his fingers shaking. When he brought his father beer, his hands shook so much that the can would fall. And that meant blows, a cord, a cigarette. Sometimes his father poured the rest of the alcohol on him, laughing. "Now you're a man. You smell like a man." "I raised you like a dog," James said one day, "and you'll always be one." He pinned Andrew's face to the ground and crushed him with his foot. "Come on, Bach, come on, say thank you, Daddy." One day, Andrew tried to run away. He reached the road. He stood there, not knowing where to go. A car drove by. He raised his hand and the car stopped. But he didn't take a single step. Something inside him said, "You won't run away. They'll find you anyway." And where would you run to? He turned around and went home. He had been punished in a way he had never known before. His mother had made him kneel in the middle of the kitchen for 3 hours, then doused him with cold water and told him to scrub the entire house with a brush, in wet clothes, barefoot. After that, she had beaten his legs with a rolling pin until he began to lose consciousness. Every minute in that place seemed like an eternity, but then came something he hadn't even expected: emptiness. He stopped feeling pain. His body ached, yes, But his soul, it was dead. Andrew simply lived, as if by inertia, silently, without expression. Only thoughts remained. Deep inside, like poisonous snakes, they whispered, "You have to do this. Otherwise, you'll never get out." Never. He began to watch. Learn. Notice when your father is drunker than usual. Where the tools are kept. Where the gun is. The names of the neighbors. Who lives next door. Who comes to the ranch and when. Andrew began to write out his plan, not on paper, but in his head. Every time his mother raised the rolling pin, he looked not at it, but at the hook on the wall, where the shovel hung, or the rope, or the axe. Every time his father stubbed out a cigarette on his shoulder, he thought, "Someday you will choke on it yourself." He did not cry any more. He did not beg. He simply waited. The days passed. The old burns on his skin healed, and new ones appeared. But something greater was growing inside. The anger, absorbed under his skin, became his flesh. He didn't know if it would save him, but he knew that if he didn't, they would just finish him off. And he decided that it was better to be a monster than a victim. Andrew knew from the first second when he saw PE teacher Connors leaving the ranch. He knew what would happen, that now everything would be much worse, that everything that had happened was just a prelude. And he was not mistaken. "What did you say, creature?" Linda asked that same evening, coming up from behind. He was standing in the kitchen, sorting through potatoes. I didn't say anything," he tried to explain, but the rolling pin hit him in the side again. He fell, hitting his head on the table leg. Everything swam before his eyes. "You betrayed the family, bastard. Do you want us to go to jail?" she screamed, hitting with all her might. Each blow was precise, to the ribs, stomach, arms. The rolling pin crunched with rage. Then Linda took a floor brush and began to hit him in the face, the back of his head and his fingers. Andrew screamed in pain, like a cruelly wounded animal. James came to the scream. He silently watched his wife beat the boy. Then he spat on the floor and pulled out a lasso. "Now it's my turn, dog." He threw a rope around Andrew's neck and dragged him along the floor like a sack of potatoes. He wheezed, his nails clinging to the boards, and his mouth was covered in blood. "Since you started talking, go ahead, bark loudly." James mounted his horse and began to drag the boy along the ground after him until he lost consciousness. Then he tied his hands and threw him into the old barn behind the house, extinguishing his cigarette on his chest. "Sit quietly, or die there if you want." And the door slammed shut. He spent 2 weeks there, 2 weeks on the straw in the dark. His whole body was burning. His face was swollen. One eye wouldn't open. Every movement, every breath was torture for him. Andrew was peeing under himself, unable to even get up. He didn't call for help. He didn't beg. He just waited. Flies crawled over the wounds. Rats came in the evening. The boy drove them away, breathing through his teeth and whispering, "Not today. Not me. Not yet." On the 15th day, Andrew's face had already healed a little, and the door to the barn opened. "Get up. It's time for school," said James. He didn't answer. He just stood up. It was unknown how. His body did not obey, but something inside made him stand up. Something already lived separately from the pain. He came to school, all in long sleeves with a hood, and when Mr. Connors came up, he looked him in the eyes. "Andrew, are you okay? Where have you been? You shouldn't have come. You've ruined everything. It's worse now, much worse. The teacher said nothing, but his heart sank. A few weeks passed. Everything seemed to have calmed down. The parents no longer raised their hands. They watched. They felt something, but it was too late. Andrew had changed. He didn't smile. He didn't listen to the music. He watched, like an animal. His eyes showed no emotion, only the silence before the storm. In class, he began to lose his temper. He threw his fist at one boy right during recess. He hit the wall and split his lip. "What's wrong with you?" the teacher shouted. He laughed. "I can't, but he can," he answered. The principal called the parents, but they didn't come. 2 days passed. Then the school representative, Mrs. Grayson, went to the ranch. Andrew opened the door. "The parents are gone," he said. "They went to Austin. They'll be there soon." She nodded, but she noticed. "The cars are there. They're on the bus. Are you okay?" "Yes, ma'am. Everything is fine." But his hands were shaking. His lips were dry. He looked as if he could see through her. And Grayson felt a wild fear. But where were James and Linda really? The truth is that Andrew's psyche couldn't take it anymore, and he killed them. His mother was the first. He waited for her to knead the dough. He took that very rolling pin. "Andrew, bring me," she began, but she didn't have time to finish. The first blow landed on the back of her head. She fell and screamed. He hit her again and again and again. Her face turned to mush. Blood splattered everywhere. On the walls, the furniture, the ceiling. Andrew stood over her and breathlessly whispered, "You always loved your pies. Here's your last one." Father returned later. He went into the house and saw Linda's crushed body. "You? You did this, you little creature?" "Yes. Now it's your turn." James rushed towards him, strong, huge. But Andrew was waiting. When he got closer, he suddenly pulled his hand from behind his back and plunged a sharp kitchen knife straight into his stomach. Then again and again. Father screamed like a wounded bull. He fell and began to crawl. "You always said I was a dog." Andrew sat on his chest. "Now I'm going to hear you bark." He pressed the knife into his throat slowly, looking into his eyes, watching the light go out. When his parents were dead, he lay down next to their bodies. That night, for the first time in years, he slept soundly, like a baby. The next day, he dug a hole behind the barn, the same one where he used to hide. He wrapped them in a tarp and buried them, sprinkling them with lime. Then Andrew leveled the ground so that no one would suspect anything. "It's done," he whispered. "This is my ranch now." 2 weeks passed. The parents did not show up. The school was getting worried. Mr. Connors put pressure on the administration. "Something is wrong. He has changed. This is not a teenage thing. I saw the darkness in his eyes, and his parents were taking too long to show up." He called the police and told them everything in detail. "Check, please. I have a bad feeling about this. It's true. Very bad." In the morning, everything was quiet. The sky above the ranch was clear, as if nothing had happened. It smelled of hay and dust. But Andrew felt the menace growing in the air. He knew that today was the end. When police cars appeared on the horizon, his heart seemed to stop. Slowly, steadily, they drove up to the house. 1, 2, 3 SUVs. A fourth, a car with the sheriff's crest. Behind them, an ambulance. "They know," he whispered. "Everything." He stood by the window, clenching his hands until they crunched. His palms were sticky. The smell of death wafted from behind the barn. No matter how hard he tried to hide the smell, corpses cannot remain silent forever. There was a knock on the door. "It's the police. We have a search warrant. Come out, boy. No nonsense." He didn't answer. Another knock, much louder. He darted to the closet and pulled out his father's old, loaded revolver. Andrew had checked it beforehand, in case he had to defend himself. He hadn't thought. He hadn't planned. Instinct, panic, pain. All of it flared up inside him at once. He jumped out the back door and ran to the unattended police car. "Stop!" one of the policemen shouted. But he couldn't stop and jumped inside. Andrew took off, pressing the gas pedal to the floor. The wheels kicked up dust. The car tore away. The police fired a few warning shots, but it didn't help. The chase began immediately. Sirens wailed. Commands came over the radio. "Target on the run, teenager armed, heading for the highway. Closure the east exit. He may be heading towards the city." He raced. His heart was pounding in his chest. His eyes were dry and burning. He didn't know where he was going. He just drove forward, trying to avoid punishment. But all the roads were quickly blocked. On the highway ahead, spike strips and a bunch of armed men in uniform appeared. He abruptly turned right, sped along a country road and drove onto an old bypass. And suddenly Andrew saw the school building, the same one where he studied, where it all began, where it would all end. He braked sharply, jumped out with a revolver in his hand and ran towards the building. The first person he met was a security guard. "Hey, what's wrong?" he asked before the revolver hit him flat on the skull. The man collapsed unconscious. Andrew burst into the school. Students in the hallway screamed. Someone started filming on a phone. Someone ran. He darted to the biology room, the closest room with a door and a lock. He dragged 5 people there, 3 students and 2 teachers. "Sit. SIT, I said." They screamed, cried, begged. He was shaking. The barrel of the revolver was thrashing in his hands, as if it didn't know what to do or who to kill. "I didn't want to. It's not my fault. You don't know what they did to me, what kind of abuse I've been through." One of the women, Mrs. Brown, was sobbing. "Andrew, please, can we talk? Talk?" He laughed, and his laugh sounded like a sob. "Where were you when I was living in hell? Where?" The school was cordoned off. Police lined the perimeter. SWAT was brought in. "I confirm, hostages in the biology room. There's an armed 12-year-old inside. Name is Andrew Rivers." A negotiator entered the building. It turned out to be Mr. Connors. He stood to the side of the door, listening. "Andrew, it's me. Listen, I'm here. I believe you. I know you were hurt, but it can be fixed." "You can't." Andrew's voice broke. "You all think I'm just crazy, but I'm a victim. I was burned, beaten, humiliated, and you all closed your eyes. No, man, please, put down your gun. I promise, you won't be alone. I'll help." There was silence for a second, but then came horror. Someone twitched outside. Click. Sounds on the radio. Someone gave a signal. Andrew heard noise behind the door. Someone was trying to get in. Panic flared like a spark. He screamed, "Stay away, I said." One of the students, a boy named Dylan, screamed and jerked toward him. A shot rang out. The bullet entered his chest. Dylan fell, wheezing, and blood began to flow across the floor. The teacher tried to rush to his aid, but another shot followed, and the bullet hit her in the stomach. "Shut up! I don't want this! I don't want this!" he screamed, crying, shaking, and shooting at the same time. Another student tried to jump out the window, but the bullet entered his neck. He fell, writhing, splashing blood on the desk. Screams and the flapping of death's wings filled the room. The police could not hesitate any longer and burst inside. Gun on the floor! Andrew, clutching the revolver in his bloody hands, turned around. His eyes were wild and empty. He was covered in drops of blood, and his face was as black as death itself. Bastards! All of you are bastards! He extended his hand with the gun forward, but before he could pull the trigger, a burst of machine gun fire tore his body apart. The first bullet in the chest, the second in the neck, then in the stomach, shoulder, face. He jerked as if dancing under the blows. Then he collapsed next to the bodies of those he had just killed. Nearby was a revolver, which turned out to be empty. When everything died down, there was only blood, the sound of sirens, and the ringing of ruined lives. Connor sank to his knees, looking at the teenager's corpse. "We lost him long before this," he said dully. "It's just that no one wanted to see it. I'm so sorry. But now your suffering has come to an end." He ran his hand over Andrew's eyes and left the office. The police finished the investigation quickly, but the people around couldn't come to their senses for a long time. Everyone began to wonder why this happened, and what would have happened if they had turned their attention to this boy earlier. The end, or not? Don't forget that it depends only on you whether this story gets a second life. The one that gets the most likes and views will find its continuation with an equally creepy and terrible development of events. It all depends only on you. Thank you for being with us.